talking about heat pumps. Heat pumps are at the forefront of the net zero discussion and are growing in popularity with both installers and homeowners. And the government has ambitious targets for UK-wide heat pump rollout. And of course we have the boiler upgrade scheme. And our panel's going to look at the current state of the heat pump market and well, how the industry can work together to deliver these systems at scale, and that's kind of a key thing. Now, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves from my left onwards and tell us who they are. A bit like blind date, really, here, but blind date for octogenarians, I think. But anyway.
That's unusual for you to be rude, Dave. My name's Tim Pollard. I've spent 30 years in the industry, and the last 15 of which is trying to promote a more sustainable outcome in construction, and that, of course, includes renewable heating devices and heat pumps.
Brilliant, thank you.
Hi, my name's Craig Dolan. I'm the European Business Development Manager for Vaillant. I was formerly the product manager for Vaillant, so I introduced most of the heat pumps for Vaillant into the UK market, and I'm also the Vice Chair of the Heat Pump Association.
Hi, I'm Ken Bone, work for Your Energy Your Way. Been an installer for about 30 years and installing heat pumps for about 15.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Phil Hurley. I'm the current chair of the Heat Pump Association, and this year is my 40th year in the plumbing and heating industry, and 18 years in heat pumps.
You look far too young. It's unbelievable.
Man and boy.
Man and boy.
Hi, my name's Neil Lawson. I'm here as a committee member of the Ground Source Heat Pump Association. I've been involved in this industry, well, heat pumps specifically, for 22 years, doing both ground and air from domestic up to large commercial.
Brilliant, thank you, panel. Now, we were due to be joined by Andrew McLean from Bays, which is kind of a government type thing, isn't it? But unfortunately, due to the train strike, he wasn't able to make it. I'm not going to make any ironic comments about that. That's just the way it is. But look, gents, why has the government chosen heat pumps as a key pathway to net zero? I don't know who wants to pick that up first. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, there's many solutions.
Just hold it nice and
sorry.
good.
Yeah, many solutions, but the main product which is available now are heat pumps. And as the government says, there's no silver bullet. If we're going to reach our net zero targets, there will have to be a range of solutions. But heat pumps is really...
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to hold it really close. That's
yeah,
it.
Heat pumps are really the only technology available now. We can't wait for technologies which may come in 10 to 15 years' time. So they're available now. The also beauty about heat pumps, if you put a heat pump in today, it will continue to decarbonise because the electricity generation is decarbonised all the time. So by about 2050, it'll be producing about 0.01 tonnes of carbon. So that's the reason the government see heat pumps as a solution.
Right. Tim, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think one of the principal benefits, it's proven technology. You know, I think there's all sorts of fantasies going on about devices and strange things, and magic boxes, magic wallpaper. But the fact of the matter is, I lived in Sweden some 35 years ago, which means I'll never eat fish again. But, you know, just about every home in Sweden had a heat pump and still does. So this is proven technology. Over a long term, it works.
So why have we lagged behind then? Why are we that far behind?
Because we've had cheap gas. That's why.
Fair enough. Okay, well that's a good enough answer. But do we know how many heat pumps were installed in 2021 compared to previous years? Tim, pass the microphone. No, I'm not asking you. Give someone else a go.
Yeah. So the market was around 60,000 units, so it doubled from the previous year.
So it's gone from 30 to 60.
30 to 60, or 35-ish to 60.
And what are the projections, do we think, for this year? Do we know?
Well, the projections, we are on track for the 600,000. We are currently. There is a large amount of scaling that needs to be done in order to get there, which is why the Heat Pump Association and all the manufacturers here are getting on board with heat pump training and developing the market and supporting installers through that change.
Right, we'll come on to training a little bit later. Yeah, go on, sorry. We're gonna...
I mean, the public awareness now for the technologies is absolutely grown, and the momentum is absolutely massive now.
How has it grown? what's been the cause of the growth, do you think, of that awareness?
I think in certain sectors it's almost become sexy for someone to have a heat pump.
Look, we've got a heat pump.
Yeah, it's maybe people do want to change. They do want to decarbonise. Before even the energy clamps were put on us, people were starting to take an EV. They buy an EV, and then they start getting interested in where their kilowatt hours were going to go. So they got more interested in energy in the home as a general thing, and they started to analyse their own consumption a little bit more. And I think that's also helped push the heat pump technology.
Yeah, it's definitely a spin-off from the EV and from Greta, whether you agree with her or not, getting it into the public consciousness. And one of the very, very few benefits of COVID was when we came off the roads and everybody stopped moving about, everybody realised how clean the air was getting.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Products of combustion from cars
And
or
how
from
cheap
any
petrol
other,
was
and
for
how
a
cheap
while.
petrol was. The other thing that's happening is because of the Ukraine situation and the energy crisis and the rising cost of energy efficiency has become more and more important, and people are now making a conscious decision of what can I do to save it hurting my pocket as much,
Right.
and what can I do to help reduce my carbon footprint.
I was talking to Jan earlier and asking, is this a generational thing, do we think, or is it actually now, it's now across all generations, even older people like me and Tim?
Yeah, I think it's coming across to everybody. It's pester power from kids telling their parents to switch. Like
Are you seeing that genuinely?
From personal experience, I've just ordered a new car. My 10-year-old absolutely ripped me a new one because we didn't get an EV. So it's kind of like, why are you polluting the air that I breathe? Oh, Jesus, go straight for the heart, love. But it's kind of, it's becoming more aware as the cost of gas, oil, LPG, and all those other things become closer in the cost of electricity. Then we're going to see a switch, and we are seeing that switch take place now.
Brilliant. Go on. Yeah, sorry. Go on.
I'm hoping the industry is now coming into a new chapter. Some engineers have got to that chapter a lot quicker than others. That chapter definitely needs to come. The fossil fuels are finite. They're not going to be around forever.
Yeah.
We need something else to heat our homes. The technology is proven. It's been around for donkey's years. And now we need to start implementing them into new builds. Should have been done 20 years ago. We could have been leading the way as a country of Europe in being the first to decarbonise.
Yeah.
Instead, we're behind.
Which is kind of normal for us, isn't it?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now we're playing catch up, and unfortunately, the catch up is quite large for some, and that financially quite a difficult thing for some. But it needs to happen.
You mentioned Neil. Go on. I want to bring you in. Actually, yeah.
I was going to say the beauty of the technology is its simplicity. There is fundamentally one moving part, which is the compressor. And it's great to see a show like today with so many traditional gas installers coming and learning about what a heat pump is. It's been a black box, a magic box. It sits there. How on earth do you get heat out of air or ground and turn it to something you can heat at home? It never ceases to amaze me when I switch one on for a client to see the radiators get warm, the hot water get warm.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, you mentioned their cost, or you talked about that. That is an issue, isn't it? Because we recently had to replace, and then we looked at possibly getting a heat pump, air source heat pump as it happens. Sorry about that. But we got a quote, and I just couldn't justify it.
And I think that's the case with most people, to be honest, Dave.
And I realise, where we get new builds and so on, I get that.
Sure.
Get that, but people who want to retrofit,
Sure.
It's a big expense.
I think, with due respect to my colleagues here who are all involved with heat pumps, I think actually...
Neil bristled when you said that.
I think actually not that many people know about heat pumps. I think its visibility is very low. I think people have perhaps heard of the technology, what it means, how it works, how much it costs. I think the general feeling is it's going to be expensive, and generally it is in comparison with existing technologies. And I think it's going to be a hard sell to do that unless we see the rampant increase in gas prices that we're beginning to see, I think, or unless there's going to be a carbon tax or some form of personal limitation on the amount of carbon that we produce. So I'm hugely optimistic, as you know, and I am a massive supporter of heat pumps, but I think there is a very long road to go yet.
Oh, there's lots of nodding in agreement. Yeah, go on.
I agree, Tim. Unfortunately, we could have started this transition journey 20 years ago. I mean, this book came out in 2011. Low temperature heating in 2011, and that was my Bible, doing gas low temperature even back then. If we started the journey then, the transition gap between then and now, we're still fitting boilers that are running 70 degrees. In new builds, what's going on there? Why are we not ditching new build houses and fitting heat pumps straight away? Heat pump ready, low temperature, fitting cylinders at heat pump ready.
What is the answer to that question? Why aren't we?
Politics, money,
and money.
Regulation.
Right.
I mean, just look at the planning rules for heat pumps. I mean, they're ridiculous.
Wow. Okay, Neil. You're
Well, I was going to say, what hasn't driven this is legislation. We had the Code for Sustainable Homes, which was completely washed out. And we should have been fitting heat pumps in houses in 2015 and before. But here we are in 2022, and we're talking about it from 2025 onwards.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this. Last year we talked about this and so on. Well, whose responsibility is it to get up and, are we going to go on strike? That's what the railways are doing. What are we going to do?
Some of the blame is the industry. The gas boiler industry, they could have... When they sell a gas boiler, it's a boiler in a box. There are some energy efficiency options that are available. They should be built into the unit straight out of the box. That boiler should come out with weather compensation built in, not an option, just direct built in. That would then force the house builders to go down the low temperature route. That would also help the installer to be more energy efficient and not just putting another boiler on the wall and running it at 70 degrees.
Craig, would you like to comment on that? I think you should.
Bit of a landmine. Thanks very much. So from defending the boiler industry, which is a great job for me being in heat pumps for the last 11 years. But so
right, calm down, fellas. We've all had a drink.
Condensing boilers came along in 2004. The heating design standard wasn't updated or wasn't enforced as much as it should be. Boilers have got more efficiency, but yes, they do need to be set up properly. We do need to have controls. The thing is, I don't think there's anybody in this room that has actually saved up to wait for the latest boiler that's coming onto the market. It is a distressed purchase. People don't want disruption in their home. If your heating breaks at 5 o'clock on a Friday, you pretty much want it fixed by 5:05 on a Friday. So there is a bit of that. On the new build side, yes, the house builders have lobbied very well, so they don't have to change. It's the old adage: who wants change? I do. Who wants to change? No one. Yeah. It is easy to carry on with what they're doing because they are very good at what they do, and they have got it to a cost point which they like. So new build weren't ever going to change until they had a stick whipping them. When it comes to weather comp and stuff like that, yes, it probably should be standard. There's the consumer choice argument, which sometimes you buy, sometimes you don't. Are radiators sized for lower flow temperatures? The honest answer is we don't know. Because when you swap a boiler, if you're a good installer, you flush the system, you clean and do all of that kind of stuff. Nobody does a heat loss calculation to make sure that the radiators are the right size. Very few people do the system balancing, which is coming in with building regs later this year. It's great news, everybody. The heating industry is in the spotlight. bad news, everybody. The heating industry is in the spotlight. What you've always done isn't going to be good enough. It will be all right, won't be all right anymore. We need to check that heating systems are designed and sized correctly, and it all starts with the heating system. You can remove the heat source totally. It could be a heat pump, it could be a boiler, it could be whatever. But if you haven't got that heating system designed correctly and optimized, the heating appliance or the heat engine that you put on it is not going to be right. So, you know, we have been lazy to an extent, and we've taken the path of least resistance. I would like to see, when a boiler is changed or coming to the end of its life, that as an industry, we do it as a point of reference, that we go around and we make sure the radiators are the correctly sized for each room. And it might be that, you know, you need to change one radiator, but you don't have to do it at the point of distress purchase. You can do it later.
Right. Okay.
Or you might need to change 3 radiators, or you might need to change none, and then we know.
And that's what was
the
the
state of
killer
the
for
heat
us,
system.
because it was having to change all of the radiators. And then it was going to be, well, we're going to have to redecorate then after that. And so it's all the associated costs you don't necessarily think about at the time. But I'm hearing you saying, what do we want now? Instant change. When do we want it? Oh, not yet.
No, not if I have to change the carpets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? Neil, you were going to jump in earlier. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say what heat pumps or the move to heat pumps has done is highlight all the shortcuts that have been taken in the last 20 years. And there's a statistic out there that 80% of the condensing boilers were never set up to condense. With a gas boiler, you've got a sledgehammer to crack a nut. You can get away with a huge number of obscenities. With a heat pump, it starts to highlight all of that. And I just swapped out my first heat pump replacement. So it's an air source heat pump that went in 2005. To put a replacement heat pump in would have been the same as a gas boiler, $3,000. The infrastructure's there, you just swap it out. And actually it's a much easier swap. The legislation is easier on it too.
Fair enough. Go on, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think the house building is a battle won. I mean, it's late. We should have been there in 2016.
But it's there. It's over
but
the
we
line,
won.
so to speak.
Yeah, and the biggest change coming in the building regulations is flow temperature. As Ken's mentioned, low temperature heating is the way to go, and we've got that in new build. What we need is that now in all heating systems. And I think that, speaking to other manufacturers, we don't do gas, we only do heat pumps. But I think it's something as an industry we can all agree on, that low temperature heating is the way to go. And if hydrogen does come in the future or any other technology, it's better to have any heating system designed to be as more efficient as possible. And then the choice is on the customer what technology they use. And we should be doing that now, because gas boilers are still going to be going in at least to 2035.
Yeah.
So if we put in a gas boiler in now, it should be low temperature now. So as Neil says, when you do come to swap that gas boiler, it's just a straight swap.
So what I'm hearing you saying is there's a collective responsibility as well within the industry. Everybody has a responsibility.
Yeah, standards need to go up. That's the thing. Gas boiler, especially gas combination boilers, are very simple, are very forgiving.
Yeah.
Okay. With heat pumps, there's a bit more on design.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to set it up correctly, which is something which has probably been lost. So
Just
we
hold
need
this way. There we
yeah, it's been lost. So we need to get standards back up on all heating systems.
go. Anybody got any questions or comment? Oh yes, there's a hand straight up here.
So about 20 years ago, everybody hated electric cars, and then Elon Musk did Tesla. So one thing we could do is wait for government legislation and so on. One thing is joint responsibilities, you've said, but also maybe a NIBE or NIBE or another, or Vaillant or one of the others, stretches ahead and does an Elon Musk and does a Tesla and really breaks the new mold, makes the things look attractive, do communications that consumers can understand, make it look sexy, dare I say it. Yeah, so that people actually start falling in love with what is perhaps the second biggest purchase they make in the home. So, you know, somebody needs to do a Tesla around here. Maybe it is you guys, you know? Maybe it's you guys.
I think it's Jan Kriekels. You'd like to make things look sexy, wouldn't you, in this industry? Yeah.
I think the honest answer is, though, you know, people don't want a boiler, they don't want a heat pump. What they buy is a warm, cosy home. If you could do it with a matchbox, then they'd have a matchbox,
It's
frankly.
true. Yeah, look, I'm a consumer. I'm not an expert in this industry. And when it came to the distress purchase of having to change, I thought, shit, what do I do now? I just want my house to be warm. You know,
Exact-
what's the best thing? I'm confused. I don't know. I don't understand until somebody does it. So who's going to be first today? Yes, Ken's going to be first.
I was the guy on social media. I painted a heat pump grey and put a Tesla sticker on it. The amount of social generation that created was unbelievable.
Did you really?
I did. And I'd done it for that purpose because I actually knew what the result was going to be. And it was amazing. So
Yeah. When are you being taken to court?
brand does sell, certain brands do sell, and people do like certain brands.
Yeah.
And they should look better. Some of them do look pretty awful, and people don't like the thing in the back garden, even though it saves the planet and it's going to save them energy. They are slightly getting better. The Vaillant's a good one. That's a good looking
Great,
unit.
come on.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the design level that's gone into heat pumps has changed drastically, like, over the last 6 years, I would say. You know, a lot of them were very, very aircon based, very, very industrial.
Yeah.
You know, from a manufacturing point of view, there's lots of things that we've got to focus on. We've been asked by the government to get the cost down, which we're focusing on. We've got to make them less noisy, so they're non-intrusive, so we're focusing on that. We've got to make them better looking. You know, it's kind of, you look at the sound that the heat pumps make, that has dropped considerably. You haven't got the high-pitched whine or the grunt as they start up. The design, you know, they're outside, so they need to have a certain level of quality. We are an island nation. You know, you can get coastal environment as far inland as Heathrow, so they've got to have salt corrosion testing and things like that. So these are all things that we have to consider as manufacturers.
Yeah, because what you're talking about there
because
is not
we're
sexy.
stressing about the stuff that nobody else wants to worry about, because nobody wants to think about their heating. They just, like Tim said, they just want it to work.
But also, by the same token, excuse me, how many consumers think, well, it's going to come down in price? Because if I buy it now, it's going to be way more expensive than if I wait 2 to 3 years, if I can hang on.
I mean, we need to be frank. Heating's not sexy at all, okay? And
This gentleman thinks it is, though.
And, well, I do.
Could be.
I love it, but
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
consumers will spend more on a kitchen, okay? Instead of
but there's an aesthetic thing there, isn't there?
It is,
And it's an
it's like,
aspirational.
but the first time they notice it is when it breaks down. So we need to change the mindset, and I think that mindset is changing because we've got two things changing that now. One is climate change, and one is the cost of living and gas prices going up. When people feel it in the pocket, and as Tim said at the start, we've had cheap gas for 20, 30 years. That's now coming to an end, okay? So when it starts to hit people in the pocket, then they do think about this. I totally agree we need to change the mindset. We need to look at new ways of doing heating, heat as a service, things like this. So, and we need disruptors, and hopefully manufacturers will be part of that disruption.
Do you drive a Tesla?
No, I don't. I don't agree. I think you're all being not bold enough. I think years ago when I was a kid, if anybody had said somebody was going to make a telephone sexy, we'd have laughed at them. Now you spend upwards of £500 to £1,000 on a phone because somebody's made it sexy. Somebody's made it so important, functionally brilliant, and emotionally a hinge, a real thing you depend upon. And that works for so many different categories. Electric cars, nobody dare look at them 20 years ago. Yeah. Now everybody's queuing up for them. You can't buy them because everybody wants one. Because he's made it sexy. Yeah. And you can honestly, you can go on for years by saying it's not a sexy industry. The last time I went into somebody's house that they just converted, the first thing they wanted to show me was their ground source heat pump. Yeah. Come and let me get a glass of champagne and come and let me show me your ground source heat pump. Really? Yeah. People are proud of this stuff. You've even said it yourself earlier today that people are starting to say, I want one because everybody else is they're starting. It takes one of you guys to pull away from the pack, and you'll lead the pack, and you'll gather up the cash on the way.
But
I love your passion. I think it's fantastic.
But
Great point, well made.
But cars and a phone, you're interacting with all the time. With heating, once it's working, you forget about it. That's the difference, and it's how we change that perception. That's a difficult one. Hopefully, we will have a solution.
I was going to say, to make it sexy, come into my warm house, take your clothes off.
Well, there you are. You weren't expecting that offer when you got here this morning, were you? Well, I'm not even going to go any further down that road. Anybody else comment or question? Yes. Tell us who you are and what you do, where you come from, your interest.
Yeah, I'm Mark from Home Tree. We do a call-out service throughout nationwide. One of the things I really wanted to find out is obviously they're heavily subsidised, the heat pumps, with this £5,000 grant at the moment. That runs out in October 24. Solar had the same thing where it was really the thing to have, and then the bottom fell out of the market on it. With 1.67 million gas boilers being bought every year, to change over when that subsidy runs out, how do you think that's going to continue, or will it follow the way of solar going forward?
Thank you. Good question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't like subsidy. I think subsidy is not the right way to go. When I first started in heat pumps, and Neil was around that, we didn't have a subsidy, and we were selling heat pumps on its merit. What subsidy done is making the price increases. You've seen when somebody came to quote your house, it inflates it. Okay, what we need is a technology where normal plumbers and heating engineers is part of their armour when they go into people's homes without subsidy making it complicated. So it's there. Hopefully, it will help, but it's not a long-term solution. We need to grow the industry without subsidy, because I think it can sustain without it.
The attitudes need to change. All attitudes need to change. The momentum's there. It's really growing. I don't think it will stop now. As I say, the fossil fuel industry, it's on a hide into nothing. It's hanging on by the skin of its teeth now, or by the fingernails. I mean, just look at the last few years at the shows, everything else that's going on. Even the installers are more aware. They know they need to change. We need to make that transition easier as well. I think installers that are coming into heat pumps, into renewables as a whole, we need to make it easy for them. And at the moment, I don't think that's quite there in certain areas.
Is there still confusion amongst how to fit and so on? Is there confusion amongst the installers, do you think, or what is it?
Forgive me, heat pumps are pretty much all the same. The key is low temperature design, good heating calculations, and once you've got all that package, you can pretty much bolt on any heat pump onto the end of it. It's a bit like a gas boiler. You have to get the design in place. Low temperature is the key. The low temperature works out your pipe sizing, works out your heat emitters. Once you've got that as your base core, you can fit pretty much any heat pump you want.
All right, Neil, you were going to jump in earlier.
Well, I was just going to jump in there and say it is different, but it's not difficult once you understand the basics.
So is there enough training going on?
Not at all. I think you'll find a number of installers are trying to or struggling to get apprenticeship schemes going, or people through them.
There's too many bums on seats training. It doesn't prove competence.
So it's ticking a box, basically, and saying, here's a piece of paper.
Training is a big industry in the UK.
Yeah,
it's a
no,
massive industry.
Yeah.
I've done some really good training, and I've done some training that to be honest, it's just been bullshit.
Don't sit on the fence. That's what I hate about you. Craig, go on.
Right, yeah, so going back to your question on the subsidies. So if you look at the PV market and the feed-in tariff, that really put a black dot on all renewables, because it changed the conversation to what's my return on investment. And you don't have a return on investment on any other heat source. You don't have a return on investment on your car. Arguably, you have some return on investment on a new kitchen. But what we are starting to see now, and if you look at the reports coming from Nationwide and things like that, when you have an EV charge point on your house, it puts £5,000 value on your house. When you have a heat pump fitted to your house, it increases the value of your house. So we're starting to see that kind of argument. When it comes to the training and the heating system design, we've been lazy. And now we can't be lazy. So
So what are you doing to catch up?
So there's the low temperature, low and medium temperature course that's been designed in partnership with the Chartered Institute of Plumbing Engineers, along with the Heat Pump Association. Vaillant are running it. Worcester, there's NIBE. There's a high number of manufacturers who are now going to start pushing out this training, and it is a lot harder than the training that has come previously. So, and it does, I know, bums on seats, I'm going to tackle that. It is about having a certain level of technical ability and then being able to prove the competence. And then you can move on and you can do the heat pump training course, which is up to 3 days, where you learn about the heat pump technology, the system design, and all of those types of things. The trouble that we have is the heating industry as a whole, generally it's a distressed purchase, so it's a fast turnaround job. When it becomes a considered purchase, people want to feel, when the installer turns up, they need to feel that they are the expert in what they're doing. If they are doing something that is new, they need a little bit of support and mentoring. And that's where joining up with other installers like Ken, or having a good support network around you, so when you are trying something new, you are confident that you are doing the right thing for that homeowner who is paying you to do something in their house. And it's getting that, confidently competent
because they're
area.
putting massive trust in the Kens of this world, if you like, who are going in on your behalf, and it's not you that's the risk factor, it's Ken.
Yeah, and then you've got the other side of the coin, where you've got a very overconfident engineer who does what he always does because he's always done it, and he's confident that it's going to work until it doesn't. And so we've got two headwinds.
Yeah. Ken, did you want to say something?
I mean, the typical job, I'll give you one example. We recently done a 5-6-year-old house. It had 42 kilowatts of gas boiler in it. Looked lovely on Instagram. It only needed 14 kilowatt heat load. It was all underfloor. It had about 1 million pumps and 1 million zone valves. We took it all out, fitted one heat pump, and strangely enough, he's warm.
Funny that. Anybody else like to make a comment? Yes.
I can talk commercial now. So Yaga is a company which makes actually heat pump radiators. So one thing that maybe is forgotten is the interface. Nobody wants to follow this discussion. Nobody. Everybody wants an interface which looks sexy. How he can dominate his home, how he can see how much he uses. It has to be in the hand of the consumer. And maybe we have to force more on this, because nobody is interested in a heat pump or a cool pump or a gas boiler. We have to make interfaces together that we can see how much the home is using, how much carbon you actually are using less. And that's what we have to focus on. And I'll follow this guy there. It has to be more sexy.
We've had conversations about this on Twitter and various others. It would be really good to have a league table of installers in the UK who fit the most efficient system. So if every heat pump had monitoring and energy monitoring, the consumer could see what their COP is, what their SCOP is, how much of energy they're using or putting in, how much energy they're getting out. But you could then sort of audit installers and installer companies based on the performance they're getting out of those heat pumps. So if you are fitting the best system going, you could be at the top of the league.
So who's going to take responsibility for getting that going?
Anyone but me.
Anyone but me. When do we want it? Well, not me. I don't want to do it. But you're right. Why not? Go on.
Yeah, it's the industry's job, but we're not doing that with gas boilers. So we have to change the industry, not just the heat pumps. We have to start with the industry.
Just because we didn't have it and we don't
have
it.
No, I'm not saying that, but we have to change the industry.
But one of those things...
Because if you just do it on heat pumps, we've got the same problem. You're just putting more standards on heat pumps and the costs go up. We wanted to drive costs down.
I understand
So you need to be doing apples and apples. So both systems are fully designed and they're cheap to run for the homeowner, irrespective of the heat source.
But Tim, this is where we got frustrated in September last year. Is whose responsibility is it and who's going to do it?
Industry.
I go back to the old, what happened with condensing boilers. When condensing boilers came out, nobody wanted to fit condensing boilers, by the way. The whole industry said it was impossible to do. But what happened was the government changed the building regulations and said condensing boilers are mandatory. And guess what? From that day, everyone fitted condensing boilers.
So you think it should be mandated?
I think there should be
Absolutely.
a standard mandated. I wouldn't want to mandate a technology. I think we should have a mandatory standard which would be defined in terms of energy use or carbon or whatever, much like a thing called the Code for Sustainable Buildings, which might be quite a good idea. If the man was from Bays was here, we'd perhaps...
Well, he's stuck on his train.
We'd perhaps tell him about that. That for me is the answer. Make it mandatory and people have to do it.
Craig, mandating, what do you think?
Yes, but not a technology type. So we need to have that freedom of consumer choice. But when it comes to the heating system, we need to mandate that, definitely. We need to mandate peak flow temperatures of 55 degrees, radiator system balancing, water quality, all of those things that are pretty obvious and things that we should be doing, but we've always avoided because we've tried to cut the cost and do it cheaper. Heat pumps are the go-to technology. They're zero emission at point of use. They're decarbonising progressively as the electricity decarbonises. There's no products of combustion. They seem like the logical choice to go to. I don't know why we're not going that way a bit more. They are a bit more intrusive when it comes to the installation, but we are seeing that shift in momentum. But we need to get the heating system design right. We need to do that bit first. And at the moment, nobody knows if their radiators are sized for 55 degree flow temperatures or 45 degree flow temperatures. Because when they were put in, it was big flipping window, big flipping radiator. So it was kind of, you can replace the F if you want. So it's those kind of things that we need to get a handle on. And then it's the micro-bore pipe work and what are the flow rates and the pressure drops. And it's all the things that you learn when you're an apprentice and then you learn that you don't need to do when you're on the tools. And we need to relearn those skills and be reminded, which is the responsibility of manufacturers and training institutions and installers to actually take the time and do that and make sure that the homeowner understands the value of doing those things.
And that's one of the key points, surely.
Getting the consumer on board is absolutely critical because...
Well, unless you have, it's not going to happen, is it?
Exactly.
But Ken, you took a big, sharp intake of breath.
If the boxes are not coming out regulated at 50 or 55, and they're still regulated at 82, or they can go up to 82, when is that gap ever going to get closed? Because it's going to take years and years and years for that gap to close. If they came straight out of the box at 50, 55, you'd create a low temperature industry overnight. The installers would have to just follow and go with it. At the moment, they would go to Mrs. Miggins and go, yeah, we could do these energy efficiency things, but I mean, so I've got to change 20% of your ads. This is going to be extra cost, blah, 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 as you said earlier. Yeah. I will do it in 5 years' time. No, let's do it now. Let's do it now because in 5 years' time you can then make an easier transition to a heat pump.
Yeah.
I think this winter a lot of people's attention is going to be focused on energy.
Well,
our gas prices and electricity have gone through the roof.
I was going to say that. The way it's going to go this autumn, I mean, unless something dramatic happens, we're going to suddenly see a lot of people going, hang on a minute, I didn't buy into all of this. And so is that an opportunity then?
That's the consumer driving the market now, or energy prices are driving the market. But it's different to legislation.
Yes, so it's an opportunity for the manufacturer, for the industry to capitalise on that bad moment to actually say, hang on a minute, there's a solution to this if you want it. I knew you were going to come in.
Well, yeah, but the problem is you're going to have to spend money to save money, and that for people is a real barrier. I mean, let's be honest. And how many people have that much money available? And that's quite a lot of money in terms of a heat pump.
But they can spend it on a 25k kitchen. Which when are they going to get their payback on their 25k kitchen?
And they can show the neighbours. And they can show the neighbours. So I genuinely believe nobody wants to do bad things. You know, and you ask anybody, they don't want to do bad things. We don't want to cause global warming. We want to do the best we can. But the first thing we want to do is to make sure that our families are comfortable, that we're comfortable, that we can manage within ever-rising prices, within rampant inflation. So I do think there's an opportunity, but I do also think that if the current economic situation carries on, that it's going to be a very hard sell.
Well, on that happy note, anybody else got a comment or a question they'd like to ask at all? Someone over here? Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you there. Right. Do you want to come a bit closer so we can pick it up? Sorry. Thank you very much. Tell us who you are, where you're from.
I am from London. I'm not in the industry, but in the property industry. So for us, just looking at making buildings more efficient. But we're talking about, are there savings? You know, spending money to save money. Is there a return? Is there a payback? Because I'm getting conflicting views on whether that is actually possible. Are people making the investment because of the green credentials? Is obviously going to be a hard sell because, as you said, you know, everyone wants to save the planet, but first and foremost, want to make sure that you're not out of pocket by 5 or 10 grand.
Why does that have to be a payback?
Why does it have to be a payback? Because as we said, primary concern is not to spend more money to heat my home or my office. My primary concern is to heat my home. And then if I can heat my home in a more efficient way or a more green way, absolutely. If you gave me two examples side by side that cost the same, I'd pick the green one every day. But if you go on the Tesla website, they do say this is X saving on your fuel that you're paying on, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think to get consumers into the market and want to be doing this, there has to be a saving. There has to be some sort of payback from the baseline, which is the gas boiler.
Okay, so taking that question and looking at it in a slightly different way, we waste too much heat. Gas has been really, really cheap, so we haven't had to deal with the waste. Now we are having to deal with the waste. So we have to insulate. We have to reduce that waste. So is it worth investing reducing your energy wastage? Definitely. And then you get the knock-on effects. Like this winter is going to be tough for a lot of people because we've got leaky houses. And it may come down to a lot of people between heating and eating and that type of argument. So if you've got the money to invest in looking at the fabric of your house, like if you're cold, you don't do star jumps, you put on a jumper. So we should be looking at the things that are reasonably practicable to do to our homes before we look at changing the heat source or doing a larger capital investment. So it's, you know, making sure your windows don't leak, draft excluders, you know, the air brick regulators, all of those types of things to try and reduce the heat loss first and then go and do the large investment. So as a property person...
That's saying a lot, though, that you guys sitting here on a heat pump panel are saying actually the first thing you should do is insulate your home and look at those things before going down that route.
Definitely. There's, you know, an oversized heat pump is just as bad as an oversized boiler. You need to reduce the waste. If we want to be green, you know, and we've got a 14 kilowatt heating requirement, and you could spend £500 and reduce that 13 kilowatts or 14 kilowatts to 12 or 11, then that's a good return in investment, because then you could have to buy a smaller heat pump and you may not have to do so much change to your heating network. So it's look at the things downstream. Make sure your heating system's designed correctly. Make sure your house isn't wasting loads and loads of heat, and then do the heating system. You know, and it's a step-by-step process. Like you can turn the boiler flow temperature down to from 70 to 60, and then you know, as long as you are staying warm, you can tweak it yourself and turn it down a little bit more. So there are things you can do without having to go the whole hog. And then somewhere like the Energy Saving Trust probably needs to be updated to give that guidance to consumers. And I know that's something that we're working on in Vaillant to really help the consumer along on that journey, because, you know, it's a large elephant that you've got to eat, so we need to slice it.
You know the way, notice the way he got Vaillant in there. And I can see you spontaneously combusting, but I'm going to leave you a second because Jan over here wants to make a comment.
Maybe some last thing. I was creating heat pumps in the 80s. Jager was a manufacturer of heat pumps in the 80s. I had to stop it because the gas price was very low. But maybe I think the Chinese model. You know, a heat pump is not expensive. It's a small motorcycle, practically 1,200 euro, 1,500 euro does it cost maximum. And the rest is added on by taxes and people and installers, actually. So it is not an expensive product. But I remember a place in China where the government gave 50,000 heat pumps for free to the people. If you look at the investments the governments are doing daily in business, in roads, and everything from business, it's not such a big amount to give the heat pumps for free to the people. What do you think about it? For the installer, it's not bad, but...
It's a bit like furloughing, where we'll end up paying for it, surely, at the end of the day. I mean, I don't want to be cynical or anything like that, but Phil, did you want to come in on the comment as well?
Yeah, we're just going back to the gentleman over there. As an industry, we would always say energy efficiency first. Energy efficiency first.
Yeah.
Insulate before you generate. That's what we'd always say. That comes up most because you will get savings irrespective of the heat source, if it's gas or it's a heat pump. And later on, when you exchange that gas boiler for a heat pump, the work's already done and the cost saving. If we're talking about cost savings at the minute, if you exchange a gas boiler for a heat pump, you will save money at the moment. And the return on investment, there isn't a return on investment because any heat system costs you money when you turn it on. But you will have a return on investment if you swap over an oil boiler at the minute with the cost of oil. Okay, and the government has committed to phasing out oil boilers by 2026. Okay, yeah. So there is a savings to be had.
We're oil.
Yeah.
And I tell you what.
So you will get a return on investment. You would pay for that system. You get £5,000 of government, and you would pay for that heat pump.
Just replaced it, but the cost of oil at the moment
years.
is so prohibitive, it's unbelievable. Yes, yeah. I get what you're saying.
The other thing we really have to remember is the heating industry operates in the bottom rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, you need to feel warm and safe for everything else in your life to be secure. So if you haven't got the heating right and that is causing you pain or stress, then that cracks the foundation of those needs, and it impacts, even if you're not consciously aware of it, it impacts every aspect of your life. So we have to be aware, as a heating industry, we are responsible for, you know, not putting people in hospital. If there's in a cold home, respiratory disease and heart disease goes up, it's all of those knock-on effects that people don't consider. Like, so definitely insulate before you generate, and make sure that people are warm and comfortable, and make sure that they know how to use their heating system, and, you know, and they understand where the energy is going and why. We have to keep that in mind, because I know it's kind of like,
no, I get it.
Hit a heating system and get out and fit the next one. But we have to remember that it has a huge, when it doesn't work, it has a huge impact on people's lives.
You're right. And Craig, I wasn't expecting a therapy session this morning, but that was very good. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I'm going to kind of wind up now. Neil, can I start with you? And just, what do you see as the biggest challenge going forward as we sit today?
I'm not sure there is just one challenge.
Okay, what are the biggest challenges then?
Cost of fuel at the moment. So if you're on oil, there's a straightforward payback because oil is so expensive. If you're on gas versus electricity, you need a heat pump to operate at a COP of about 3.8 to be equal. Any more efficiency and you're making a payback. There are discussions about the green levies on electricity prices being swapped over to gas. That would certainly level the playing field and suddenly give everyone a payback. But that's on the political agenda. It's a political football. It's a short term. Politics is short term. It's a 4 or 5 year cycle.
Well, yes. I mean, there is. We could get onto the subject. What happens if? And you know what I'm going to say. And it could all go pear-shaped, couldn't it? But anyway, let's not go down that road. Yeah, I wish we had the bloke from base here. Phil.
I think the biggest challenge is training installers. The government has committed to 600,000 heat pumps, we need at least 30,000 installers trained to achieve that. That's our biggest challenge. And with anything, if you install more heat pumps, the cost will come down. So installers is key to this.
Who picks up the costs for training the installers?
Well, as an association, we're trying to lobby government to give assistance for the first, say, 10,000 installers to assist in that transition. Okay? So, but yes, at the moment, it's on the installer. So for an installer to train, he needs to see a future.
Yeah.
That needs to be consumers asking for heat pumps,
Yeah.
and also policy in place to make them change.
Thank you, Ken.
Start installing low temperature. Try running, if you have a gas boiler already, just try running it at lower temperatures.
Okay, but you've got to educate people to do that, haven't you?
The engineers that are installing boilers now, just don't walk away leaving them on factory settings. Turn them down to 55, 60. I know we're meant to be doing that now anyway, but try it. Try it in your own house. When you go to service a boiler that's 10 years old, turn it down to 50, 55 degrees. See what happens.
How many Tesla logos have you got? No, don't go there. How many Tesla badges have you got?
I've got 27 kilowatts of battery, Tesla.
Brilliant. Yeah, Craig.
So to echo what Phil said, there's a huge training and competency exercise. It's making sure we design the heating systems to run on low temperatures. But there's also the consumer. So we need to bring the consumer along on that journey as well. So it's raising awareness of the heating system, how to control your heating system, the different options when it comes to your heating system, and investing in your heating system and not just the heating appliance. So it's making sure the consumer awareness is going up. We need to build on that going forward and take the installer along on that journey so they feel comfortably competent.
Brilliant. So Tim.
Well, I don't know what's left now, really. I'm going to say something perhaps a bit different. I'm going to say consumer trust. I'm going to say, we have to establish consumer trust. They get so many conflicting messages from so many different sources, different technology manufacturers, different people's views. I think we have to gain their trust and be transparent about what they can expect. Be absolutely transparent and to say, this is what you can expect, that's what it's going to cost if you do it this way. And I think one of the problems is, at the moment, people are very, very, very nervous about it because they don't know who to listen. We are inexpert buyers, Dave. We are inexpert buyers, and any human will tell you that makes you vulnerable. So I think we've got to get their trust.
Okay, well look, Tim, Craig, Ken, Phil and Neil, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's been a fascinating conversation. We could go on a long while. Thank you to the contributions also from our friends in the audience. Would you please give a big round of applause to our panel here today?